Hey, what's up there, YouTubers? It's me again, Brian, aka Gamer55551, and I am back with a video review. And for this review, we're going to be taking a look at BioShock the Collection, a collection of 3 of the BioShock games: BioShock, BioShock 2, and BioShock Infinite for the Nintendo Switch. The BioShock Collection is also available on the PS4, Xbox One, PC via Steam, but we'll be focusing on the Switch version. And if you're interested in any gameplay footage, I'll have a link down in the description down below, or you can click on the card that will appear on the screen though. In 2007, 2K Games released a first-person shooter by the name of BioShock, and it was sort of an interesting game that came out. It's basically you exploring this dystopia world of Rapture, dealing with everything from splicers to big daddies, and it was certainly a fascinating world that they created and all. Now, I never played the original one on the Xbox 360. I never owned an Xbox 360. My first time playing BioShock was when it eventually came to the PlayStation 3, the PS3 though, and that was the first time that introduced me to the world of Rapture and the world of BioShock and all, and it was a series I actually fell in love with. I love the whole idea of the narrative-driven story, and the world around Rapture and all was always like fascinating at all. This game also followed up with a sequel, BioShock 2, and somewhat of a spin-off in a way, with BioShock Infinite taking place instead of in the underwater city of Rapture, in the skies above, or shall I say in the world of Columbia that rests in the skies and all. All 3 games were still fascinating to this day, and eventually the games would also be remade or remastered and be ported over to the PS4 and the Xbox One. But Nintendo fans never got a chance to try these games out, because 2K never brought these games over, despite rumors at the time when people thought that, or should I say rumors at the time that were claiming that BioShock Infinite was going to be coming to the Wii U. Obviously, that never happened. It wasn't until earlier this year that on several different rating boards, several games were spotted on it that looked like they could be coming to the Nintendo Switch. Catalina Full Body Edition, XCOM, and BioShock the Collections were some of these ratings. It wasn't until one of the directs that we eventually saw the trailers of what 2K was bringing over, and that was Borderlands Legendary Collection, XCOM 2, and BioShock Collection though. And after spending some time with the BioShock Collection and trying out 3 of the games, I honestly will say that not only do the games hold up very well, but I will say that the port house that handled it, Virtuos, I think did a really good job with this port. So why don't we get started with the pros and cons, and we'll start off first with the pros. And the first one I do want to talk about is the gameplay. And honestly, the gameplay till this day is still solid and enjoyable though. Although the game is a first-person shooter, there are certainly some areas where they shake the gameplay up a little bit, mainly with the whole plasma, or in BioShock Infinite, the Vigors, if I'm saying the name correctly. These are basically stuff that grant you powers and abilities like ranging from shooting to electricity, shooting fires, or launching crows, and all. You basically mix this up with the gunplay and all. And some of these powers can be used in certain puzzles and so forth. So for example, in BioShock 1 and 2, with the electric ability though, you want to maybe shock like a turret or a security camera, and you can use this opportunity to either bypass it, take it out, or hack it. And if you have the ability and you do it correctly though, you can have it and it could be used against any of the enemies that show up, like the splicers or the big daddies and all. And what's interesting also about these games is they also offer basically choices and consequences though. Do you take a little sister's life to get more atoms, or do you save a little sister to get less atoms but might reward you down the road? So there's certainly some choices and consequences in both games like BioShock and BioShock 2, and to some degree BioShock Infinite though. So in terms of gameplay though, the gunplay is still solid in this game, and I definitely like the use of the powers in the game though. It does kind of give a little bit of a RPG vibe, even if it's just a little bit though. The next thing I do want to talk about is the story, and I will say the stories in all three of the games I think are solid. I know some people have some issues with BioShock 2, but I still enjoy BioShock 2 and all, especially in fact when this one where you actually play as a big daddy and all, and that really adds a little bit something interesting to the gameplay mechanics or the gameplay itself and the story. It does make you kind of wonder if they ever do another BioShock game that takes place in Rapture. What if they did something like if you played as like a splicer or maybe a former little sister or something like that? That would be kind of interesting. So the story is still good. Both the first and second one stories are still well done, but Infinite is still my favorite one indeed. As much as I enjoy the story in BioShock 1 and BioShock 2, I definitely like Infinite a little bit more, mostly because it shows a twisted dystopia version of, like a 1910 America in a very, shall we say, somewhat racist but in an interesting way nevertheless. I mean, one example is that they treat John Wilkes Booth, the guy who assassinated Abraham Lincoln, they treat him like he's a war hero and all that stuff. So it's a very twisted, and some of the stuff they say in the game may come off as somewhat racist, but I still view it as, story-wise, it's still my favorite nevertheless. And I still enjoy the story in Infinite. It still remains my favorite one. Though BioShock 1 and 2 still enjoy those stories nevertheless. And last but not least, I do want to talk about is the port. And I honestly have to say, Virtuos, along with XCOM 2, I felt they did a really good job with this one, though. In fact, I would go and say is that between XCOM 2 and this, I think the BioShock collection is definitely the best one, though. As much as I enjoy XCOM 2, I think this one is really good. The game, all three games run very well based on my time with the game, though. Yes, it does run at 30 frames per second, though. It doesn't run at the 60 frames per second that the PS4 or the Xbox One or even basically the PC version does. But still, it runs well even at 30 frames per second, and visually it still holds up and all that stuff. It still looks good, though. The art style to the game looks nice and everything like that. It may not look as clean as, say, like I mentioned, PS4, Xbox One, or PC, but it still holds up very well. So I have to say, hats off to Virtuos that handled the Switch port of, of the BioShock collection. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll get to part 2, which are the cons. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 2 of our video review of the BioShock collection for the Nintendo Switch. So now that I gave you the pros, why don't we get started with the cons? And just like the pros, there are only 3 cons I can really think of in terms of the BioShock collection. The first one we do want to talk about is the download requirement that unfortunately BioShock collection has. Much like Borderlands Legendary Collection and XCOM 2, unfortunately BioShock Collection does not escape the fact that this one will require a 31 gigabyte download, though. Now, it's not a big fan of it, though, but when compared to Borderlands Legendary Collection, this one kind of is sort of like, it's better than the Borderlands Legendary Collection, but not as good as XCOM's 2 collection, though. What's interesting is that once you download the games and all that stuff, every time you basically put the cartridge, and I'm basing this off the physical version, every time you put the cartridge inside basically your Switch, though, you'll be able to play any of the games right off the bat, though. In other words, if you don't have it's not like how it is with the Borderlands Legendary Collection, where they give you only a cartridge with just one of the games, the first one, and the other ones, they give you a download code. It doesn't exactly work like that. However, it doesn't work exactly how the Metro Last Light games were, where the developers managed to shove both Metro Last Light and 2033 both into one cartridge. So you're not seeing something like that, but I will say it's better than Borderlands Legendary Collection, but not as good as, say, XCOM 2's collection was. So it's sort of a bit of a reminder for those who plan to take the physical version. It is a 31 gigabyte download requirement, though. The next thing I do want to talk about is for BioShock 2. Unfortunately, though, there is no multiplayer mode or anything like that. I think I remember in the original BioShock 2 when that came out, it did have the multiplayer mode. I never got around to playing it or anything like that. But unfortunately, at least as far as I'm aware with the Switch version, although I'm sure this also applies to the PS4 or Xbox One. I'm not 100% sure on that. Unfortunately, the multiplayer is not in BioShock 2, or at least in this BioShock collection, though. Some people may be disappointed with that. Others may not view that as a big deal or anything like that. So depending on your point of view, either you are disappointed they took the multiplayer out for BioShock 2, or you're not really losing sleep on it. So that really is going to depend on your point of view. And last but not least, I do want to say is that some of the gameplay mechanics, while they don't ruin the game, I'm not a big fan of some of the approaches looking back at it, though. For example, as much as I enjoy the first BioShock, I will say one annoying thing that I don't like is the fact that, unlike, say, 2 and Infinite, though, you have to really switch between using your gun or using your powers, where in 2 and 3, you can use both of them at the same time. So there's some annoyance with that. While with BioShock Infinite, though, you can only carry 2 weapons compared to 1 and 2. So there's just some mechanics that are sort of annoying. Oh, and you have to click on the R1 button to sort of aim down and all. So some of the mechanics, though, I'm not a big fan of. It doesn't ruin the game entirely, though. It's just certainly annoying. And looking back at it, though, I do wish that the developers kind of made some adjustments to the mechanics, though. I mean, they still hold up. They're still good and all. I'm just not a big fan of some of them. Overall, I will say BioShock the Collection, I will say, is a must-own, though. The gameplay is still enjoyable and solid even after all these years. I love the story, especially the world of Rapture and Columbia, though, especially with Andrew Ryan's or Comstock. If I'm saying the name correctly, I apologize if I'm not, though. And I have to say, Virtuos did a really good job with the support, and I think they did a good job handling it, though, which is really, really good, especially after some people criticizes them with the way they handled the Outer Worlds. I don't think it's as awful as some people make it out to be, though, but I will admit it's not the best version out there and all that stuff. Still, like XCOM 2 and Borderlands Legendary Collection, a download requirement is still necessary, 31 gigabytes though. Excuse me. The multiplayer has been taken, or should I say BioShock 2's multiplayer has been taken out. Some people are going to not like that. Some people really don't care. And like I said, some of the gameplay mechanics, like, they don't ruin the game, but I'm not a big fan with some of the approaches and all. But nevertheless, this game holds up, though. The BioShock collection, in my view, is a must-own because I love the narrative-driven single-player experience, and the BioShock collection definitely delivers. As far as whether picking up the Switch version or not, that will depend on your preference and all. While I won't call this game the most graphically demanding game compared to, say, something like Doom or Wolfenstein 2 or Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, though, I mean, the game still holds up very well, though. It really boils down to, are you okay with it running at 30 frames per second? Are you okay with the fact that when playing the dock, it will be at 1080p? Handheld, it will be at 720p, and do you like the idea of bringing it on the go? I mean, if you're looking for the best looking version of the BioShock collection, of which has BioShock 1, 2, and Infinite, then I would say go with the PC version, which is obviously going to be the best version no matter what, or the PS4 or Xbox One. But if you like the idea of bringing it on the go and are not bothered with it running at 30 frames per second, or bother with the fact that you're going to get it at 1080p docked or 720p in portable mode, then it's worth picking up the Switch version. Either way, I definitely recommend the BioShock collection. It's definitely it has 3 classic games in there, and they're definitely fun and enjoyable in my book. Whether it's worth getting the Switch version or not will depend on, like I mentioned, all that stuff, and of course, how big of a factor you view portability. Okay, this concludes this video review of BioShock the Collection for the Nintendo Switch. And again, these are my opinion. What are yours? What are your thoughts about BioShock the Collection, though? Are you glad that this finally came to the Nintendo Switch? Are you happy with the port job that Virtuos did with this version and all that stuff? Do you like any of the BioShock games? Is there one that is your favorite at all? Or do you prefer skipping this one, to be exact? Do you think 2K Games should bring more of their games over to the Nintendo Switch? Like maybe try to bring the Mafia series over? And do you think this might encourage Rockstar to consider maybe bringing over something like, say, the first Red Dead Redemption, or say like Grand Theft Auto 5 to the Nintendo Switch? Or assuming trying to convince Take-Two Interactive and all, since they own Rockstar and 2K Games. Do you agree? Do you agree with what I said in this video? Do you disagree? Do you have a difference of opinion? As always, sound off on the comment section below. Let me know what you think. Excuse me. And if you like this video, I hope you hit the like button. I would appreciate it. And I hope you do subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you do, make sure you hit the bell icon for notifications of any new videos I put up. Also, feel free to share this video if you want to, and feel free to donate to my channel if you like. You could do it through PayPal Me or Patreon. Links will be in the description of this video. And I will see you again next time when I do another video. Hopefully that'll be soon. Until then, from Southern California, I wish you all a good day then. Bye!